It's the night of the Kamiki Village annual festival. On the night of any normal festival, you'd find people laughing, drinking, dancing. The fervid joy pulsing through the air would be enough to melt away all of your worries. However, for the villagers of Kamiki, a powerful sense of dread grows stronger and stronger at every passing second. As much as they may try to distract their minds, a horrifying truth lingers in their thoughts. Someone will die tonight. A white-plumed arrow tears through the sky and sinks into a villager's home. Dressed in ivory robes, the chosen sacrifice makes their way to a cave far from the village. From the cave's depths, 16 crimson eyes lock onto their prey. In a flash, the beast's fangs encase the sacrifice, and they're dragged into the darkness. This went on for 99 years. On the night of the 100th festival, a villager named Nagi decided to defy the monster's order. As the love of his life was chosen to be sacrificed, he went in her stead and opted to fight the beast. Alongside a white wolf named Shiranui, the two fought the monster and eventually claimed victory. The beast's spirit was sealed in the Moon Cave, and peace was finally restored to Kamiki Village. Welcome to another episode of Occult in the Ordinary, where we examine elements of horror and other spooky stuff we can find in non-horror games. In today's episode, we're talking about Okami. Before we jump in, I have a brief little announcement to make. First and foremost, I want to say that I've been blown away by all the support that my channel has been receiving lately. It's genuinely surreal. I never thought I'd get this kind of attention from talking about the games that I love and how they terrified me when I was a kid. Thanks to everyone's support and kindness, I've felt the confidence to start my own Patreon. This is for anyone who wants to go that extra step and directly support the channel. Of course, don't feel any obligations. If you're watching this video, that already means a lot to me. The Patreon is just here for anyone that might want to support the channel even further. Don't worry though, all of my videos will still be available here on YouTube for free. The link to the Patreon will be in the description, and again, no pressure. Thanks again so much for the support, it genuinely means the world. Alright, let's jump back into the story of Okami. The story of Okami begins 100 years after Nagi's victory. At this moment in time, someone has freed the monster from their imprisonment. The 8-headed serpent, known as Orochi, is now free to wreak havoc just as he did in the past. Orochi unleashes a terrible curse that ravages the land, but one lucky village has resisted this dark force. Thanks to Sakuya, a wood sprite living within the village's sacred tree, Kamiki Village managed to survive. Desperate for help, Sakuya summons a powerful goddess to protect humanity from Orochi's reign. This goddess is Amaterasu, the origin of all that is good and mother to us all. Her spirit possesses a statue of Shiranui, and her divine light shines once again. As Sakuya debriefs us on our mission and what has transpired, a small creature makes its way out of her kimono. This thing is Isun, a wandering artist who's very fond of certain individuals. Together, Amaterasu and Isun travel the land, help the people of Nippon, and put together a plan to stop Orochi. If this game's plot or any of the characters sound familiar, that's because Okami draws a lot of inspiration from Japanese mythology and folklore. You might already be familiar with characters like Amaterasu and Orochi if you often engage with Japanese media. The manual that comes with Okami even has a section dedicated to the mythology and traditional stories that are referenced in the game. It's very cool and one of the main reasons why I purchased a PS2 copy without hesitation. Love me some physical media. So for this video, I want to focus on the creepy things that appear in Okami itself, as well as the unsettling real-world myths and folktales tied to the game. Also, sorry in advance if I butcher any Japanese names or words. I feel like that's gonna happen a lot during this video. And I can't think of a better place to start than this game's first dungeon. Ami and Isun's quest eventually leads them to the Tsuta Ruins. This is the first major dungeon in the game. The ruins feel deeply unsettling thanks to that ominous track that plays here. It also doesn't help that powerful monsters lurk about the area. In fact, the creepiest thing about the Tsuta Ruins has to be the boss that we fight here. At the heart of the ruins, we find a path leading to this dungeon's boss. On our trek up to this enemy, we find a room full of strange statues. These are haniwa, which are hollow clay figures. It's believed that haniwa were used for commemorating the dead during the Kofun period of Japan. If they look familiar, you may be thinking of the gyroids from Animal Crossing. These adorable little noisemakers look very similar to haniwa. In fact, there's a gyroid NPC named Lloyd who's referred to as Haniwa-kun in the Japanese versions of Animal Crossing. The appearance of the haniwa in the Tsuta Ruins has some dark implications, especially since there are so many of them. This dungeon's connection to death is made even stronger when we proceed down the hall from this room. Here we can find several human skulls lying around. Since these skulls are found just outside of the boss room, it's safe to say that the monster here has claimed quite a few victims. Hoping to defeat the evil that lurks inside the ruins, we enter the beast's lair. This is the Spider Queen, a monster empowered by Orochi's spirit. We have to defeat her to rescue the dog that she's kidnapped. The Spider Queen is inspired by a yokai known as a Jorogumo. A yokai is a supernatural entity from Japanese mythology, and when it comes to yokai, maybe you can relate. I've been told my whole life that yokai are essentially Japanese demons. However, that description isn't entirely accurate. Yokai can be demons, but not every yokai is a demon. The term yokai can be used when referring to a variety of supernatural beings. It's a real frogs and toads situation that I hope I explained correctly. Once a Jorogumo yokai reaches 400 years of age, they gain supernatural powers and begin eating humans. They're most known for targeting young, naive men. The spiders lure the men by transforming into beautiful women. Then, once a man takes the bait, they are ensnared in the yokai's powerful webs and slowly consumed. The Spider Queen's own deceptive nature is demonstrated by her ability to disguise herself as a harmless flower. Isun, a young and sometimes naive man, falls for the trap as he believes it is hiding treasure. Once Isun is saved by Ami, the Spider Queen appears in her true form. In this state, the queen looks like a woman fused with a spider, just like the Jorogumo. However, beautiful isn't the adjective I'd use to describe her, at least based on Isun's reaction to her. The Spider Queen is one of very few adult women in Okami that Isun isn't completely enamored with, which makes sense. Her appearance is pretty unnerving. The Okami wiki claims that the queen's design is inspired by Sadako, the spirit from the Ring horror films. The wiki supports this claim by citing the text from the Okami art book, but since the text is in Japanese, I can't 100% verify this claim. However, I don't doubt that it's true. The Spider Queen's long black hair is similar to Sadako's in the way that it obscures part of her face. Both characters also wear white outfits, and to top it off, both characters are pretty horrifying in their own ways. During the fight, we need to pull open the bud on the Spider Queen's back by using the vine technique. Once the bud is open, we need to rush in and destroy each of the Spider Queen's eyes. It's really gross. As we attack an eye, this weird blue and yellow blood squirts from inside. Ugh. As gross as it is, I really do like how the Spider Queen has 8 eyes, just like a real spider would. I also think that this helps strengthen her connection to Orochi even further. I like to imagine that he just gets along with any creature that has 8 of any appendage. Much later in Taka Pass, Ami and Isun find a house nestled in a valley. As we approach the home, the sky turns dark and sinister music begins to play. Getting closer to the house reveals its decrepit state and a woman standing outside. This woman is the horrible Mrs. Cutter. Upon noticing Ami, Mrs. Cutter expresses her desire to eat the wolf. After this interaction, Mrs. Cutter will chase us with her trusty knife until we leave the area. Now, Mrs. Cutter is no match for a god, but that doesn't make her any less terrifying. Mrs. Cutter doesn't have pupils, wears a kimono that looks as if it's stained with blood, and carries a suspicious looking bag. If you watch her bag, you can clearly see something squirming on the inside. Anytime this thing struggles to break free, you can briefly see dark red spirits floating out from inside. You can also spot black limbs piercing through the lid of the bag, suggesting that Mrs. Cutter is harboring something demonic. The official artwork for Mrs. Cutter reinforces this idea, as we can clearly see some sort of monster quietly escaping her bag. The inside of her home is no better, as it's littered with human skulls and spider webs. We can also find a pot cooking up some food. If we inspect it, Isun mentions that it smells nasty. Since it's surrounded by human bones, I believe it implies that the Cutter family are cannibals. And as if this wasn't bad enough, there's a graveyard nearby the house. Later, Isun even suggests that these may be the graves of the Cutter family's victims. Despite something being very clearly wrong here, there's nothing we can do at the moment. Once we visit Sasa Sanctuary, we meet the Sparrow clan. This family of birds are panicking because their boss Jamba has lost his daughter. The Sparrows inform us that we won't be allowed to enter their sanctuary until Jamba's daughter is brought home safely. After searching high and low for Jamba's daughter, one villager in Kusa mentions an old couple that suddenly needed a bird cage built for them. Based on this clue, it's obvious that the Cutters are involved. When we return to the Cutter's house, we run into the dreadful Mr. Cutter. Just like his wife, he is quick to attack Ami and devour her. Inside the house, we can find Mrs. Cutter sharpening her knife. She says she is no longer interested in eating Ami because her husband caught a new beast for them to eat. This beast has been constantly tweeting since it's been captured, so it's no doubt Jamba's daughter. To save the Sparrow, we need to blast a hole in the roof of the Cutter's house and expose them to moonlight. Mrs. Cutter mentioned earlier that the moonlight exposes their true forms and give her and her husband strange powers. Once we drag Mrs. Cutter into the moonlight, a devilish shadow is cast on the wall and she starts breaking down. Evil spirits come flying out of her bag and her true form is revealed. The old couple turn out to be two crow tengus in disguise. According to Okami's bestiary, these monsters are the combined spirit of a swordsman and a crow. This would explain why they were able to claim several human victims, as well as capture Jamba's daughter. Having access to flight and legendary swordsmanship skills would no doubt be a huge help. The Cutters themselves are actually inspired by a Japanese fairy tale called Shitakiri Suzume. This story is actually referenced in the mythology section of Okami's manual. There are many versions and translations of this story to English, but they all follow the same basic premise. In this story, an old couple lived together, alone with no children or family. The old man was kind and he kept his own pet sparrow that he loved dearly. However, his wife was very irritable and didn't take kindly to the sparrow. One day the sparrow had eaten some of the starch that was left out in the couple's home. This infuriated the old woman. She was so furious that she grabbed a pair of scissors and cut the sparrow's tongue out. She then took the bird and tossed it outside. The old man was distraught by what his wife had done and searched the mountains for the sparrow. After a while, the old man discovered a beautiful home hidden away inside of a bamboo forest. This home belonged to the sparrow and his family. The sparrows greeted the old man and thanked him for his kindness. For a parting gift, they offered the old man 2 baskets, but he could only choose one. One of the baskets was large and heavy, while the other one was small and light. The old man decided to take the smaller basket, then he made his way home. Once he was home, he opened the basket and discovered that it was full of treasure. The old woman listened to the old man's story and got excited when she heard there was another, larger basket. She marched her way over to the sparrow's home and demanded a gift. The sparrows offered her baskets just like they did with the old man. The old woman, of course, took the large basket and sped home. However, when she opened the basket, she found that it was full of monsters. These beasts leaped out of the basket and attacked the old woman. It's a pretty simple story about kindness and the dangers of greed. The story itself isn't perfectly reflected in Okami, but the connection is clear enough. The cutters and the sparrows in Okami feel more like a spooky reimagining of the original folktale. I also really like how this original story is referenced in the design of Mrs. Cutter. Earlier I mentioned that Mrs. Cutter wears a giant bag on her back that looks as if monsters are ready to break free from it. We even see ghosts and demons fly out of the bag when Mrs. Cutter is dragged into the moonlight. This aspect of her character seems to be a reference to the ending of the original folktale. And while this is a really sick detail, it makes me worry for Jamba's daughter, who was inside of the basket. Her name is Chun, and she, doesn't seem fazed by essentially being trapped inside of Pandora's box. She's actually very lively and joyful. Speaking of lively and joyful, the Kamiki annual festival is about to begin, so we'll head there next. What would be another fantastic celebration is ruined by one villager in particular. Susanoo, a descendant of Nagi, has drunk all of the special sake prepared for the festival. All of the other villagers are shouting at him outside of his front door, begging him to come out and explain himself. Inside his house, Susanoo begins sobbing. He explains that he was the one who freed Orochi from his imprisonment. He was motivated by the pressure he felt by being a descendant of Nagi, the man who originally slew Orochi. Susanoo thought he could prove that he wasn't actually Nagi's descendant if he wasn't able to remove the legendary sword that sealed Orochi away. However, he was able to lift the sword, and as a result, Orochi was resurrected. As Susanoo finishes explaining, a white plumed arrow cuts through the sky just as it did 100 years ago. Orochi demands another sacrifice. This time he has his sights set on Kushi, the village sake brewer. While she initially seems hesitant, she quickly leaps into action. Kushi runs to her house and brings out her special Thunder Brew sake. She believes she can use this alcohol to intoxicate Orochi. According to the legend of Nagi, he also used sake to lower Orochi's defenses. This story in Okami actually mirrors the real-world myth of Orochi. According to the myth, Orochi would visit an old couple living in the Izumo province every year to feast on their daughters. Each year he would consume one of their children until there was only one daughter left. Susanoo, the storm god, stumbled upon this old couple after being kicked out of heaven. He told the old couple that he would slay Orochi in exchange for their daughter's hand in marriage. They agreed, and Susanoo went on to fight Orochi. To keep their daughter safe, Susanoo transformed her into a comb and tucked her away safely in his hair. He then prepared 8 jars of sake for Orochi. Once the monster appeared, each of its heads drank the sake and eventually fell into a deep slumber. Susanoo was free to then cut down each of the heads, killing the beast once and for all. After defeating Orochi, Susanoo found a legendary sword in Orochi's body. Susanoo then took the sword and offered it to his sister, Amaterasu, the goddess of the sun. She was pleased with his offering and allowed Susanoo back into heaven. After hearing this myth, I'm sure you've already noticed the many connections to Okami. For one, there are the names Susanoo and Amaterasu. I like to think that Ami maybe took a shine to Kamiki's Susanoo because he reminded her of her brother. I noticed that in a few cutscenes, Ami's tail is wagging when she speaks to Susanoo, and I just think that's kinda sweet. There's also the name of the elderly couple's daughter, Kushinada Hime, or just Kushi in Okami. One cool thing about Kushi's design is that her hair looks like a comb, referencing how Susanoo kept her safe. Next, the myth also reflects Orochi's desire for young women as sacrifices. However, in the myth, he only gets to eat 7 young women, nowhere near Okami's 99. And lastly, the myth also illustrates Orochi's biggest weakness: alcohol. Respectable, honestly. We quickly catch up to Kushi and escort her to Orochi. She fully believes that her special Thunder Brew sake is key to stopping the monster, and she's not wrong. Kinda. At the foot of the moon cave, the serpent is quick to accept this offering. We chase after Kushi and find our way into the depths of the moon cave. Here there are 2 imps guarding the entrance to a stronghold where Orochi's dinner is being prepared, and with a clever disguise, we infiltrate the dungeon. This might be my favorite dungeon in Okami. Despite the very grim and dire circumstances, this dungeon is very lighthearted. The imps are all scrambling to prepare Orochi's dinner, and you can't help but feel just a little bad for them. They haven't had to cook anything in like 100 years, then they suddenly have to prepare a dish for one of the greatest monsters the world's ever seen. Like, this would be a sick level in Overcooked, I'm just saying. Moving on from the dungeon itself, we make our way up to Orochi and find Kushi. We hop into the arena and come face to face with the 8-headed serpent. Equal parts terrifying and badass. Isun lobs the Thunder Brew at Orochi, but it does nothing. We also can't harm Orochi as he's completely invincible. It's not until Susanoo appears that the Thunder Brew sake is transformed into the special 8 purification sake, which means we can finally get Orochi trashed. From here the battle plays out much like the real world myth. We get each of Orochi's heads intoxicated, then we lay waste to him. This battle is hardly anything frightening, but I do want to mention one of Orochi's supernatural abilities that I found to be pretty disturbing. Throughout several points in the game, we can find Susanoo dozing off in various locations. When we find him in Kusa village, it looks like he's having a nightmare. Over at the Gale Shrine, a ghost named Yatsu informs us that Susanoo's nightmares often cause him to cry out in his sleep. It's not until Susanoo defeats the monster in the Gale Shrine that we see the source of his nightmares. From the monster's body, Orochi's spirit drifts outward towards Susanoo, and despite the silence, Susanoo claims that he can hear multiple voices speaking to him at once. He runs away hysterically and Orochi's spirit disappears. It seems like Orochi has some sort of special telepathic ability. He can haunt someone's nightmares and swarm their mind with a surge of voices, likely from his other heads. This might be the reason why Susanoo ends up drinking all the special sake prepared at the festival. Not only because he feels remorse for freeing Orochi, but also because of his dwindling mental health caused by Orochi's nightmares. Though try as much as Orochi did, he ultimately failed to break down Susanoo. Ami and Susanoo brought down the beast side by side just like in the Legend of Nagi, restoring peace to the world. This brings us to the end of Okami. At least, I thought it was going to be the end. Yeah, no, this was just one arc in the game's story. Weird, right? Like, with how much the intro of the game plays up the importance of defeating Orochi, I really thought this was going to be it. Shortly after Orochi's defeat, Ami and Isun make their way over to Sei-an City near Ryoshima Coast. Since we've spent most of our time out in the wilderness, it'll be fun to finally see what city life is like. Sei-an City is infested with green smog that permeates throughout the air. The citizens of Sei-an are bent onto their hands and knees, coughing and wheezing. This plague will eventually destroy the city. We meet a priestess named Rao who offers a solution. Rao claims that Himiko, the queen of Sei-an, will be able to exorcise the evil within the city if she gets a special treasure to help bolster her power. This treasure, known as the Fox Rods, can be found in the sunken ship off Ryoshima Coast. All we have to do is get onto the ship and loot the place. It's another dungeon to explore, but the sunken ship is special for being hands down the creepiest level in Okami. Inside the ship, we find piles of human bones and their spirits haunting the place. According to Rao, this ship was sunk by a water dragon that went on a rampage. The ghosts here are the spirits of the people who died as a result of the water dragon's attacks. On the bright side, Rao is here to help us pacify these ghosts with the help of her prayer slips. Just one shot of a slip is enough to exorcise the ghosts and send them to the afterlife. While the ghosts aren't utterly horrifying, they look kind of weird. Do you see those floating orbs surrounding them? I've noticed that whenever a ghost is depicted in Japanese media, they'll occasionally have these weird fireballs floating at their side. In Japanese folklore, these are called hitodama, which are supposed to represent a person's soul. They can appear in a variety of colors and often show up in places where people have recently passed away. We can even see purple hitodama that illuminate the halls of the sunken ship. They can be seen floating above the skulls mounted onto the walls. Maybe they linger here because they can't find peace after dying in such a sudden and tragic way. The sunken ship is also home to ghosts who are completely immune to the power of the prayer slip. In the treasure room near the entrance, we can find a ghost off in the corner that is just ahead. Its long black hair phases through the floor and the ghost is twitching. Once we approach, this happens. That was the spirit of the Spider Queen. You can't fight her or avoid her. She's solely here just to scare you. This isn't the only ghost like this either. Later in the ship you can find another one of these jump scare types. This time it's the spirit of the Crimson Helm, the monster we fought at the Gale Shrine. I'd argue that this jump scare is the creepier of the two because of its roar and the way it chases after you. I was spamming all sorts of attacks when I saw these spirits. I hadn't saved in a while and God forbid I was gonna get a game over. Yet easily the worst part of the sunken ship for me comes from this flooded hallway. Basically what happens is, well, I'll just let you see what happens. I should preface this by saying that this was my first time playing through the entirety of Okami. I had no idea this was coming, and I genuinely got just a little spooked. Why is it always something in the water? This giant seaweed monster has complete control over this room. As you try to make your way across the water, its hands will rise above the surface and crush you. Once you get up to the walkway, the hands don't relent. You can't attack the hands, and Rao's prayer slips don't work at all. Escape is your only option. When I first got to this room, I assumed that these were just random disembodied hands. If we look below the water's surface, we can see who or what exactly the hands belong to. Ew. The head of the monster is also immune to all types of attacks, unless we lower the water levels and get on equal footing with this thing. Again, our attacks and Rao's prayer slips are useless, but we can use these spiked barrels to finally do some damage. With a clear look at this monster, I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to be based off of. Originally, I thought it was based on kappas, a type of aquatic yokai that look kind of like a turtle. However, the Okami wiki claims that they're inspired by umibozu. These yokai appear at sea and attempt to sink any ships they come across. Their true form is a mystery. Whenever I've seen a depiction of an umibozu, they look like giant shadows. Their eyes are usually the only thing that you can clearly make out. It's theorized that the umibozu are actually the spirits of priests that were thrown out to sea and left to die. This theory comes from the yokai's name, as umibozu translates to sea priest. Okami actually makes a nod to this theory in-game. Once you defeat the monster, it drops a ton of praise. In Okami, you use praise to enhance Ami's attributes. Praise gives her power because it's a symbol of humanity's faith in the gods. And if anyone is gonna have a ton of faith in the gods, it's gonna be a priest. After that lost soul is put to rest, we find ourselves in the last room of the ship and we find the treasure we've been looking for. Well, we don't actually. We don't find the fox rods, but we do find this hammer thing. So that's cool. We leave the ship and have to slowly swim our way back to land. Rao notices something is wrong and begins to worry that the water dragon is nearby. Isun doesn't get the hint and thinks that she needs to pee, so he encourages her to go ahead and pee on Ami's back. the hell is wrong with him? The water dragon does show up, and this thing is huge. It eats Ami and Isun before spitting them back out at Ryoshima Coast. And unfortunately for us, this won't be the last time that we're inside of the water dragon. Sometime later, Ami and Isun reach the dragon's palace at the bottom of the ocean. The queen of the palace, Orohime, tells us that she needs the dragon orb inside of the dragon. All we have to do is jump in through its mouth and retrieve the orb. Simple. The water dragon is another dungeon we explore, and man, the entrance is just so eerie. Before you hop into its mouth, you can hear the dragon's growling and its shaky breath. The dungeon isn't very long, and I didn't find it to be particularly unsettling. The most stressful thing about the dungeon is the timed escape segment that occurs after getting the orb. Realistically, I should have been horrified. This level combines all of the things that I hated as a kid. Water levels, timers, water monsters, but I got through this level just fine. That's character development. When we bring the orb to the queen, it begins to shine and it shows us a vision. In the orb, we can see Rao being chased by a giant shadowy monster. It corners her, and before the beast can do anything, the vision ends. Ami and Isun race to Ankoku Temple, where the vision took place. Yet once they arrive, they're greeted by Rao's ghost. Her spirit leads them to a secret passage that connects to Queen Himiko's palace back in Sei-an City. When we go up to Queen Himiko's throne room, we find her lying on the floor. Queen Himiko is dead. Rao is here and she tells us that a giant monster appeared and killed the queen. Ami isn't buying it though. She starts to snarl at Rao before leaping and attacking her. Miraculously, Rao dodges the attack and drops the innocent act she's been putting on. Rao explains that she had Ami and Isun go to the sunken ship in hopes that they would be finished off by the water dragon. She's been using them from the start to get her hands on the fox rods, which we found back inside the water dragon, and immediately gave up to Rao. We then battle Rao, and after the fight, she displays her true form. She is the shadowy beast we saw in the Dragon Orb's vision. She's only been masquerading as Rao after killing the real Rao, meaning that the vision we saw was from the past and saving Rao was never possible. It also explains the ghost we saw back at the temple. Rao's spirit was guiding us towards the imposter that took her body. This imposter is no pushover either. This monster is known as Ninetails, and it's based off of the Kitsune yokai. These yokai look just like a regular fox, but they boast numerous magical abilities. They can shapeshift, conjure up illusions, and even possess people. They are powerful tricksters, but not all of them are evil. Some kitsune can be benevolent and kind, while others are a bit more malicious. One of the most famous kitsune in Japanese mythology comes from the tale of Tamamo no Mae. This story is pretty long, so I'll try to focus on only the key points. Essentially, Tamamo no Mae was a powerful kitsune that often disguised herself as a gorgeous woman. Throughout this story, she manipulates several kings and eventually brings about the downfall of their kingdoms. She soon became the consort of the Japanese emperor Toba. Shortly after this, the emperor was affected by a mysterious illness. Nobody could cure the emperor, and his condition only worsened over time. It didn't take long before the emperor's court discovered that Tamamo no Mae was actually a kitsune. An army was then quickly assembled to find and hunt her down. The similarities between this legend and Okami start with the way that Tamamo no Mae would disguise herself. The way she would consistently transform into beautiful women is reflected in how Ninetails transformed into Rao. There's also a connection between Emperor Tabo and the Emperor of Sei-an City, as both characters became deathly ill thanks to a kitsune's influence. If Ami and Isun hadn't cured the Emperor and removed the toxic fog of Sei-an, the city would have fallen to its knees. This is yet another connection between the legend, as Tamamo no Mae is no stranger to destroying emperors and their kingdoms. Back to Okami, Ami and Isun make their way out to Oni Island to battle Ninetails. With the fox rods now in Ninetails' possession, they are in peak fighting condition. They even claim to be much stronger than the gods. Though try as Ninetails might, they are not a god. In fact, Ninetails seems a little obsessed with attaining godhood. First, look at how we initiate battle with Ninetails. We have to add the stars to a constellation in the sky. This is also how we awaken the celestial brush gods to unlock more brush techniques. Next, let's look at the arena where this battle takes place. It's on top of the fortress on Oni Island, but Ninetails has transformed it into a golden misty landscape. This is nearly identical to the area that we appear in after awakening one of the brush gods. And now take a look at that mask that Ninetails is wearing. It's white with red markings. This is the same as the divine markings that appear on Amaterasu as well as all of the brush gods. And lastly, look at some of the attacks that Ninetails performs in battle. If you try to use a brush technique, Ninetails will begin drawing on the screen with their own brush. Not only is this extremely shocking to see, but it's also straight up a copy of Ami's power. I think it's pretty clear that Ninetails craves godhood. And if I had to guess why, I'd assume it's because of the power that comes with being a god. As we lower Ninetails' health, they begin to lose each of their tails. Once they're down to a single tail, they're reverted back to their normal form. Here we see that they're just an old, worn down fox. In this state, they can't use any brush techniques and they get exhausted after doing certain attacks. After seeing how weak they are in this form, I completely get why they'd want the power of the gods. Plus, those red markings are pretty cool. I'd want them too. Before we head into the final portion of this video, I want to shout out the other dungeons in Okami that I didn't dive super deep into. The Gale Shrine, Waku Shrine, Emperor's Palace, Oni Island, and Yashpet Forest all feel very atmospheric and eerie. It might just be a result of the spooky dungeon music that plays, but this game does a great job at making you feel like you're treading into some dangerous territory. It perfectly recaptured how I felt when I was just a kid walking into Ocarina of Time's Forest Temple. As much as the place felt creepy, it also felt very epic and exciting, like you're on a real adventure. It's one of the biggest reasons why I ended up loving Okami as much as I did, and I really needed to bring it up. Last on our journey through Okami, I want to discuss the final dungeon and the final boss. The last dungeon we explore is the Ark of Yamato. This is a giant ship stuck in a frozen lake that we eventually free. According to the spirits on board, this ship is from the celestial plane where the gods live. It was created by a mysterious race of people from the Moon Tribe. A long time ago, the Celestials used the Ark to escape the celestial plane after Orochi came and attacked. The Celestials hoped that the Ark would save the last of their people by bringing them to the mortal world. However, after setting sail, swarms of monsters crawled out of the Ark's depths and slaughtered the Celestials. One by one, they were eaten by these terrible creatures. The Ark soon lost its rudder and came crashing down into the lake where we found it. After this landing, it said that all of the monsters on board left the ship and went on to cause mayhem in the mortal world. It's a tragic backstory that makes the Ark feel very disturbing to explore. You're basically exploring what became the coffin for the Celestials. The Ark of Yamato serves as a boss rush type of final dungeon. There are several rooms to enter, and inside each one we have a rematch against a boss we've already fought. Once they're all defeated, again we go and face Yami, the Lord of Darkness. It's a ball. He's a ball, but he's a really cool ball. Let me explain. Yami is the Lord of Darkness and seeks out absolute destruction. He is Ami's polar opposite, and this is reflected in his design and his attacks. First, let's examine Yami's design. He appears to be a giant mechanical ball, but it's revealed that Yami's true form is at the core of this ball. He's actually just a small fish piloting this giant mech. Yami's fish form is black and blue, a complete opposite to Ami's red and white. Next, there's the Ami's attacks. He can only use the techniques of the brush gods after stealing them from Ami. When he's not using the stolen power of the brush gods, he's using buzzsaws, missiles, and electric whips to attack. All of these attacks rely on advanced machinery part of his mech. This is a complete 180 from Ami, as most of her powers come from nature and revolve around creation. This fight feels very much like a nature versus technology type battle, and it's amazing. I struggled to find out if Yami himself is a character from Japanese mythology or if he was inspired by some sort of yokai. I did find out that Yami was originally going to be named Empty Death. This is even referenced in Okami's bestiary, where it's said that some people refer to him as Empty Death. Personally, I think that this name is way cooler than Yami, but it's fine. I also found a really neat post on r/Okami that dives into Yami's origins. In this post, a Reddit user suggests that Yami was originally inspired by an ancient iconic scroll stored in the archives of a sub-temple in Japan, and a set of playing cards. It's a very cool post that I don't think I could explain properly, so I strongly encourage that you go and check it out yourself. There's a link to this post in the description. When Ami's empowered by humanity's faith in the gods, she is finally able to lay the Dark Lord to rest. The game ends with Ami and her ally Waka flying off to a new adventure, one that we will hopefully get to experience soon since Okami 2 has been revealed. I'm stoked, I'm so excited, guys. That was about all of the spooky and horrific things I could dig up in Okami. Please let me know if there was anything I didn't mention that you felt should have been included. Also, feel free to let me know if you think it's worth taking a look at Okami Den, a sequel to Okami that was released on the DS. Whenever Okami is brought up, I never hear people talk about this game, and I've always wondered why. Even if I don't make a video for it, I'd consider playing it for personal enjoyment if it's worth the effort. I played through the entirety of Okami for the first time for this video, and it's a great game. I've heard Okami frequently compared to The Legend of Zelda, and I believe that is an extremely accurate comparison. You travel the world, go from town to town, explore dungeons, solve puzzles. If you love Zelda, you have got to give Okami a shot. I think you'd love it. Hell, I was initially drawn to Okami in the first place because it reminded me of Wind Waker. The only gripe I had with Okami was that the game is very easy. Like, really easy. I got through the entire game without dying once. Here's my endgame stats. It's not a deal breaker by any means, I just don't want anyone going into Okami expecting some sort of grand challenge. Anyways, I hoped you enjoyed the video. I had a great time making it. I had a really big mythology phase back in middle school, and the making of this video just reminded me of those times. Any Percy Jackson fans? I would love to do a video similar to this one in the future on maybe the God of War series or Hades or something similar, something that's very heavily rooted in mythology. Let me know if there are any other non-horror games you can think of with their own spooky elements, and we may end up discussing them on another episode of Occult in the Ordinary. Thank you all so much for the support. It really means a lot to me. That's all I have for you guys. Take care.